All right, here we go. It is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com. Make sure this week you go see our friends at Galactic Fried Chicken down in Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up, save yourself 15%, or visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Tell them to pump it up, save yourself 15% off of your order. All right. It's interesting weekend, Aaron. Final Four is set. We will have, it's going to be a busy week here. Knock on wood. We've got spring football Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Basketball. We'll see. My understanding is West started team meetings today, or player meetings today. That'll run through pretty much tomorrow. I think for the most part, they should all be concluded by Tuesday. So at any minute now, we could start getting a better idea of what this roster is going to look like, how it's going to shape up and shape out in terms of what, if anything, is going to be available, how the staff is kind of positioning themselves, to fill those spots. So yeah, I think we're going to get a bunch of information on that as we get rolling. But it's interesting, Aaron. If you start looking at where things are at in the college basketball world, and really you don't have to look any farther than what we saw this weekend with 4 teams advancing to the Final Four. 3 of them for the first time ever. Add 3 more schools to the list that have been in the Final Four before Norwood. Did you hear? There was Cincinnati had a record broken this weekend. Did you hear that?
I did not.
The UConn win over Gonzaga was the biggest win in the Elite Eight. Or no, actually, the Cincinnati one's still bigger, but it's the biggest win in the Elite Eight since Cincinnati beat Memphis in 1992 by 31 points to make the Final Four. So the Bearcats still very relevant, that 1992 Final Four. People think it was a long time ago, but it was a historic win. And when you have historic wins, you get to talk about them for a long time. That's the fun of having historic wins. So yeah.
And I'm sure you're happy for your buddy Hurley.
I am. I sent him a text as the clock was ticking down last night. And he probably hasn't gotten it yet, but or he's gotten it, but he hasn't looked at it. I couldn't imagine. Can you imagine like a basketball family like that, like getting to their first Final Four? How many text messages he got last night? Where would you set the over under? 800? 1,000?
1,000.
Because look, if I have Danny Hurley's number, a lot of people have Danny Hurley's number. Let's just be honest about that.
Yeah. I'd set the over under at 1,000.
I'd take the over.
And for sure. I mean, your dad is one of the few high school coaches inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and
maybe the most legendary high school coach in the history of basketball.
Certainly recognized as a top 10 ever, and potentially the best. I mean, you probably catch some argument somewhere, but
sure, there's plenty out there. 4 or 5 guys you could argue, not plenty, but yeah. So very happy for him. Very happy for Mike Roberts' friend, Dusty May. Dusty May, a manager at Indiana, connections to Mike Roberts. I'm sure connections to Drew Adams as well. So how about that? FAU in the Final Four, and then it's an interesting bunch. Miami,
it is that.
UConn, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State.
How crazy is it that it's Miami's first Final Four appearance?
Not crazy at all.
No?
Up until Larinaga, that just wasn't a place that took – basketball didn't matter there.
It was football, sure.
I mean, it just, even in the local scene, Like there were good players in Miami, but like basketball, it's not too different than Cincinnati, where basketball is just not what kids do.
That fan base is going to be insufferable and expect only Final Fours now that they have a billionaire trying to buy his way into the major two sports of football and basketball as perennial
Are there
contenders in
women?
both.
I think their women are still alive for the
I think
Final
I
Four
think their
too.
women are still alive actually as well. So
Yeah,
man, some good things going down in Miami.
and that's where it gets interesting, right? Because Miami didn't go out and buy a bunch of players, but they very openly went out and bought a couple dudes.
Yeah, they ended up with I believe 3 transfers on their roster.
So and it was one of those things we talked about on this show a year ago. Like that dude was just like, I don't care. I'm like $500,000. All right, you're coming with us. How much you want? 350,000. All right, you're coming with us. Like he didn't even try to hide. Like these dudes are coming to Miami because I'm paying them to come to Miami. They have a great coach. Larinaga is legendary. But then you have Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, and UConn. 3 schools that really haven't done it through the transfer portal. They have supplemented their roster from the transfer portal, but they have built internally. And then kind of what I've been trying to talk about for a long time. You build internally, and then you look and say, okay, we've got a hole here, or we've got a spot here where we really could use a jump, where we don't think we're where we need to be in terms of our top 7 or 8 guys. Like so many people are fascinated with replacing the bottom of the roster. I want top 6 guys. Guys that if you're going to go get 2-3 transfers, I want guys that slot into that top 6 because in basketball, that's where you get the biggest help. Like that's you can change everything if you add 2 guys into the top 6 of your rotation, as long as they're mixed with the core of guys that you're bringing up through your program, recruiting through the high school ranks, developing, going from freshmen, like, backup to high rotation guy to starter to star, like that progression that you see through the roster for guys. And these teams are doing it almost exactly that way.
I mean, maybe not so much San Diego State as they had 5 transfers come. They had 5 transfers come in.
But they've had the same system and the same coach since 2017.
I get that. My point is that maybe they leaned into the transfer portal a little heavier than the other teams. That's all I'm saying.
So they had, if you remember, they were 30-2 in 2020, the COVID year.
Okay.
And they were going to be a 1 seed. Like they were Final Four good in 2020. So obviously when you have that happen over the next 2 years, you're going to lose a bunch of guys from that team. So then they had to kind of reinvent themselves. And you're going to do that when you have, especially in a program in this time in the Mountain West. Thank you very much. You're going to have to kind of supplement, like, okay, maybe we need 1 or 2 extra than we normally would have gotten because we have so many guys that we're having to replace off of a team that was Final Four good. Like, you don't just get to be at San Diego State. You don't get to be Duke.
No.
Where you have a Final Four team, a Final Four quality team in 2020, and then you run it back in 2021. I think they have 4 guys still that were on that 2020 team that didn't make it. So yeah, they did have a little bit of an extra bump in transfers, but if you look at their roster, it's not churn and burn. We're running off 9 guys. It was we have to go get 5 transfers because
somebody else poached our guys.
Or your roster turns. Guys, they're seniors, they graduate, they go to the NBA, whatever. Like you're going to have little pockets where, okay, this year looks a little different. And San Diego State had to do that. but that's and this is a coach that, if you want to really get like deep in the woods, was a Steve Fisher guy. Steve Fisher was at San Diego State for a while, then turned it over to him in 2017. Now we're at 2023. We're at like a decade that this has been the same program.
Well, and that's what I wanted to get at. Between UConn, FAU, San Diego State, and Miami, how long have those coaches been at those schools?
5 for UConn, 5 for FAU. This is 5 years for each of those guys.
Okay.
2017, so 6 for San Diego State. And then, like I said, he was an assistant for Steve Fisher, which that goes back another couple of years, so almost a decade. And then Larinaga has been at Miami for 10 plus.
So I know people get all up in their feelings about, why isn't Wes Miller already have things turned around? It's been 2 years. What is he doing? How has he not gotten there yet? It's been 2 years on a brand new system after you just had another coach who was here with a brand new system who was only here for 2 seasons himself. So you have no longevity in this program as it currently stands. You aren't replacing with guys who were part of the system that was previously here before. It wasn't like you had a succession plan. So no, these situations aren't the same. Are you going to have flash in the pan, lightning in a bottle, like Jerome Tang at Kansas State? Yes. Why? Because everything went perfect for him, for a guy who died on the court previously and a 5'4", 135-pound point guard.
It's what, like, if you really go look at all the guys he brought in, this fan base would have lost their mind for everyone but maybe Keontae Johnson. He didn't bring in Marcus Noel. So he inherited Marcus Noel from last year. He is a transfer. He just didn't transfer to Jerome Tang. He stayed when Jerome Tang got there. But like, they have a center that didn't play high school basketball, played like 2 years at JUCO and hadn't really done any. Like, the list of things, when you look at the guys, the list of accomplishments, it's like this big. And they just hit. And everything fit, and it worked. And you had 2 dynamic star players that carried them. Congratulations. You hit lightning in a bottle. Great job.
And I know people make the argument, well, Xavier's been doing it for years now. Why is Xavier having more success than Cincinnati in these NCAA tournament runs and the NIT tournament run, et cetera, et cetera? Well, the truth of the matter is, Sean Miller had his descendants take over when Sean Miller left.
Xavier hasn't made an Elite Eight in 16 years now. They've made a couple Sweet 16s, or they made one Elite. They made one Elite Eight in 15 years. They've had a couple 16s. There's been success, but it hasn't been overwhelming, and it hasn't been transcendent. They've been good, not great. Is that, like, I thought everybody here was aspiring to get Cincinnati back to the Final Four.
I also wanted to bring up the fact that while I don't believe there's any truth to any of the rumors, and obviously UC Twitter was in a frenzy, despite whatever side you may have been on, whether you want him gone, whether you don't want him gone, but the fact that Wes Miller's name is being mentioned for a school like a Penn State as their top candidate, again, say what you will, but I think that says something for a guy who people want to say that he hasn't done shit here, but yet he's being mentioned as a top candidate for
everywhere else, right?
Penn State program that hasn't.
Wow. Penn State's a terrible basketball program.
I understand, but maybe that's why would this guy be at the top of their list if they've been terrible? You don't want to continue to be terrible. You're trying to get better than terrible.
There's a lot of interest in Wes Miller. Always. There has been since he got here. There was last year. There's several programs that inquired last year and were told thanks, but no thanks. There's nothing, absolutely zero to the Penn State stuff. I can tell you that with 100% confidence and authority that there was no interest in Penn State. He never talked to Penn State. His agent never talked to Penn State. And for people that think that, you have bad info. Like,
I only bring it up just to say that there's interest in a guy who Cincinnati fans are so quick to say, "What have you done for us?"
No. I know what you're saying. I'm talking about the people that are like saying there's people out there like he's interested. He's like he will take Penn State if it's possible.
I don't know. I guess my frustration right now as a fan lies in the fact that there are other fans that want to boot a guy out who's had 2 years, who had 1 month of recruiting in his very first season here, who has had 1 full off season under his belt at this point. And is he where we want him to be? No. Did he meet expectations and maybe just slightly exceed expectations this season? Yes. And I
met expectations. That's where I'm at. He met expectations this year.
I only had these slightly exceeded because there were some extra wins there at the end of the season that we hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, but I still, you know what I mean? I'm still at where I'm at on that.
Fine. Say what you will. I think we're in a good place, and I think that this year is the measuring stick year. I think that this is where you figure out, is this guy capable of continuing to better this program? Not. You don't think we can grade him
the first year in the Big 12?
You got to start somewhere.
Okay, then let me.
I'm not saying it's time to fire him or anything.
No. Let me make a point.
I was filling dead air also.
I was typing. UConn. Dan Hurley. In his first year in the American Athletic Conference as the head coach of UConn, they were 16-17. They were 6-12 in the American Athletic Conference. They tied for 9th. In year 2, 19-12, they were 10-8 in the American Athletic Conference, and they tied for 5th. Pretty similar, isn't it? Year 3 was COVID. So I guess I can't really make this comparison because we don't have any real. Never mind. I forget it. He was okay, like in year 3. He was 15-8, 11-6. Like not blowing the doors off in the Big East is what I'm getting at. But it's I don't want to go positive or minus on that because who knows.
Like I said, I'm not trying to make a measurement on. Is it time to fire West? That's not the point.
No, I'm just saying I don't know that next year is the year we can fully just be like, we know whether this is going to work or not because you're going into your first year in the Big 12. That's my point I'm making.
Time will tell. Obviously, you win and everyone forgets everything. And
sure. We've talked a lot about the Big 12, and I've had a couple conversations this weekend looking back to like 06, 05 as this school was headed into the BCS, as it were back then, and how different the fan base vibe is right now as they're heading into the Big 12. And I don't see any joy. This is a different topic for a different day, maybe a day this week. I see this fan base freaking the fuck out about everything.
Sounds super fun.
You're going into the Big 12. Guess what this school has always done?
One.
Answered the bell. They've gone to new conferences, they've gone to new situations, they've navigated new waters, and they've always found a way to get it done. We'll shelve that for now, and we'll come back at a later date. But guess what? This is the ultimate point. The way Wes Miller is going about this rebuild sure does look a hell of a lot like Florida Atlantic, UConn, San Diego State. Maybe not exactly, but not far off. That's a nightcap. We'll see you tomorrow night. The BBP. Nico, we got a special guest. Thanks to Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya.